How do you use InStrengths profiling for teams? So usually a team will come in and say, hey, I want to understand, team effectiveness or team building. I want to leverage the team strengths. So these are typical things that any team would like to honor in themselves. So either the leader comes forward with this request or the team comes through and says, hey, we want to become a high performing team or a self-managed team. So first thing is to sort of begin to understand, what are the collective strengths that are coming through. So we know the experiences the team brings, we know the kind of competencies the team brings. Now we're sort of looking at what are the dynamics that are happening in the team. What are naturally coming in as what we call collective inner strengths. So when we look at the inner strengths profiling and the entire team takes it, we have a way of putting that together into what we call a team profiling. And what emerges through that process, and we do this through dialogue, we do through facilitation, and the data that is gathered from the InStrengths profiling. And we offer back to the team starts looking at, hey, what is actually present in our team? Which parts are, a lot more. So for example, in one of the teams that we did this profiling, it was beautifully coming through. The top two, dominant parts that were emerging for them was emotional care and what we call the data mind, which is the part that begins to bond and connect, and the part that is very logical, process-oriented, black and white, data-based. So obviously, no surprises. There's a lot of emphasis on, collective, collaborative work. There is a lot of emphasis on ensuring that, people are comfortable in the working spaces together. There is also a high need for, let's say, metrics-driven basis, process-based thinking. And suddenly the team is grappling with, hey, what's the next level game for our team? And how do we start shifting and becoming more creative? And so when they stepped back and said, hey, to us to move forward and further as a team, they started looking at their data and said, hey, maybe we should start consciously increasing the creative mind, or what we call the creative ideation process in the team. So then they started discussing, say, how do we encourage creativity or out of the box? How do we create spaces where the team can come up with what ifs? Or how do they start to be clearer on the future vision? And from there, ideate 4-5 ways of different ways of doing it. So suddenly from going back from data based, from going back on forecasting based on known data, they started getting exciting about what the future would look like, and from there started ideating, no bounds, no boundaries, what would the future look like. And that was the opening up of them consciously deciding to keep the strength of data-based, process-based thinking, known-based thinking, but still give space for creativity and newness. And then they realized that as they were discussing this, often in the past, even if the new idea comes, the data mind was so strong that it was practically asking questions even before the idea was birthed. So they realized this and said, okay, let's step back and allow the idea a little bit more incubation. We'll travel with the idea a little bit more and allow that. That was one decision. In another team, what happened was the physical part of being was among the lower parts of being. This is about stability, the physical health, and also it's about the capacity to mechanically repeat and sustain. So this clearly points out to sustenance. And one reflection question we asked the team was, so yes, you'll get excited about something, you'll put the idea forward, you'll start getting josh, you'll start launching everything, and after a point in time, it fizzles out and doesn't get sustained. And then you move on to the next idea, and then a little bit while suddenly you pick up and say, hey, what happened to the process that we set up? And nobody's following that. And they laughed because it was true, and the leader actually said that a part of the culprit is the leader itself, because the leader doesn't really hold sustenance and gets excited at every idea. Now this is not something that is wrong or bad, or it's not even, I would call, a limitation, but probably a balance that is needed in the parts of being strengths. So these conversations really started looking at what would be those internal readiness, internal shifts, capacities. What would be those tiny practices that teams can do to enable a balance in the way their strengths play out. The other beautiful thing that emerged in this process was, let's say we took a team member, a boss, and the team member. We had this conversation with the leader with their sort of team collective profile. And the reflection question there we asked the leader was, what are the strengths emerging in the team? And a lot of leaders do tell us this. I don't need to bring all the strengths. I know my team brings it. As long as my team has the balance of the strengths, I can leverage them. And this understanding was there, or awareness was there with the leader. So we worked with that awareness, and the reflection question we asked them was, so which ones, who can lead? So when it came to, in that process, what emerged was, when it came to, let's say, newness or let's say employee engagement, they actually gave it to a person who naturally likes, working with people, bringing a joy in their atmosphere, bringing a lightheartedness. They don't think twice to go and reach out to an employee and say, hey, let's do this, let's do that. So there's a natural joy, lightheartedness, carefree spirit that this person brings. And the person is only 2 months in the system, but still the person can bring that. So then, it became clear that, hey, naturally allow that person to lead certain, engagement activities, certain ways in which would be natural for them. That is fun. At the same time, there are some people who, are able to bring the evaluative or critical thinking, and we used to, and I used to be one of them. And as a joke, one of the things that used to come was, when there's a question or when there's a proposal, run it past this person, because the kind of questions they ask, you would have got everything sorted out, or you have at least looked at everything in detail. So that's a strength that this person brings. So attention to detail. So if somebody in the team brings attention to detail, run something past them to ensure that you have nailed out all the details, crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. So this is a way to sort of look at how do we leverage collective strengths. And all of this stems from the 8 parts used for individual awareness and profiling, and also used for collective strengths and leveraging them towards what the team needs to do. So this is how we use InStrengths and team profiling. So go ahead and explore this for you or for your team. Thank you.